My wife, Rachel, had a boss who was the kind of guy that liked to call himself an alpha male. The type of man who thrives on ego and control. And the worst part? He had the audacity to proposition her. The disrespect towards our marriage ignited a rage in me that I could barely contain. How could anyone be so bold, so arrogant? That evening, I got home expecting Rachel to be there, like she usually was. Dinner would normally be on the stove, the aroma filling the house. But this time, things felt off. She wasn't home yet, and it was already getting late. My gut churned as if it already knew something wasn't right. I reached for my phone, just about to dial her number, when it buzzed in my hand. "Hey, are you still at the office?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Yeah, but I'm heading home now." "I've got a surprise for you," she replied, her tone chipper but vague. "Should I start dinner or maybe order something?" I asked, still wondering if everything was fine. "No need, there won't be time for that tonight," she said, which left me even more puzzled. Before I could question her further, she hung up. About 20 minutes later, she walked through the door, and the sight of her immediately sent alarm bells ringing. Rachel looked disheveled, her clothes wrinkled, stockings gone, makeup smudged, and her hair all over the place. It was like she had been through a storm. "Tough day," I said, trying to sound casual, but my eyes were scanning every detail. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped towards me and pulled me into one of the tightest embraces she had ever given. Then she whispered into my ear, "You know I love you more than anything, right? You'd do anything for me, wouldn't you?" I nodded instinctively, thinking of all the times I'd bent over backward to make her happy. But something in her voice felt off, like there was more she wasn't saying. And then she started talking about her boss, Matt, and the conversations they'd been having at work. Apparently, they had been discussing relationships, and not just casually. Matt had been pushing some new ideas about dynamics in marriage, ideas that had clearly stuck with her. "I know you let me make a lot of decisions, like where we vacation or what we eat. And I love that about you," she began. "But Matt's been talking about how some relationships work better when the man is more submissive. It's awakened something in me, Jake. Something I didn't even know I wanted." "Rachel," I said, a bit taken aback, "I don't mind you making decisions on the small stuff. But when it comes to the big things, like our house or finances, we make those choices together. It's not about submission, it's about partnership. I've always believed that marriage is about not sweating the small stuff, you know." "Maybe," she said, her voice a little softer now. "But Matt sees things differently. He's confident, strong, he calls himself an alpha male. He thinks men like you, kind, caring, are naturally more inclined to submit. He's been planting these ideas in my head." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This Matt guy, full of himself, had managed to twist her perspective on our entire relationship. "Is that what you're getting at? What exactly are you trying to say, Rachel?" Her hesitation felt like a warning. "Matt's been, let's say, more forward with me lately. He's confident in his size and his power. And he's been showing it off at work for weeks now. I know it's wrong, but I got caught up in it. It's been exciting." Suddenly, the room felt smaller, the air thicker. "Exciting?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. She continued, avoiding my eyes. "For the last few weeks, I've been fantasizing about him, Jake. And he suggested that maybe you'd be into it. Maybe you'd even enjoy watching. If not, he says it'll make us stronger, make us have the best sex of our lives after I come back to you." I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to tell me this was all some kind of twisted joke. But she didn't. She was dead serious. "Rachel," I finally managed, my voice shaking with disbelief. "Are you seriously suggesting this? Do you actually think I'd be okay with any of this?" She looked at me with pleading eyes. "Jake, I know you love me and you want me to be happy. I think this could bring us to a whole new level." My stomach turned. Rachel, have you done something with him? I demanded, my head swimming as I tried to grasp what she was implying. No, Jake. I haven't slept with him. She hesitated, though. But we've gotten close. I've touched him. Talked to him in ways I shouldn't have. I felt sick. Has he? I couldn't finish the sentence, my thoughts too jumbled to continue. No, not yet. But he's outside, in the driveway. He's waiting for me. We're going to talk, and then he's coming inside. You can watch, if you want. Afterward, I'll come back to you, and you'll have me however you want. Disgust welled up inside me. Are you out of your mind, Rachel? I nearly shouted. The thought of being with you after him makes me sick. Rachel's eyes widened, but she wasn't backing down. I know it sounds crazy, Jake. But I truly believe you'll love it once you see how it strengthens us. This could be amazing for us. My heart pounded as anger rose inside me. No, Rachel. No way. You're crossing a line here, and I'm telling you to send him away. Now. Her face fell, her voice suddenly small and panicked. It was like she hadn't expected me to push back so hard. You always let me have my way, Jake, she said, her tone hardening. Why won't you this time? This will be good for us. I know it. She turned on her heel and started heading upstairs, saying something about getting ready for him. You can let him in when you're ready, she tossed over her shoulder as if she hadn't just shattered everything I thought I knew about our relationship. It felt like I had been struck. Rachel, I called after her, my voice filled with emotion, I understand exactly where you're coming from now. And I get what this means for us. She paused for a moment but didn't turn around. Instead, she continued upstairs, leaving me standing there, shaking with anger and disbelief. How could she be so blind to what she was doing? So convinced that this insane idea was somehow for our benefit? I knew what had to be done. I grabbed her keys, her phone, and our shared credit card from her purse in the kitchen. My eyes fell on a dish towel, and an idea began to form in my mind. I pulled a few zip ties from the drawer and grabbed a large carving knife. My heart raced as I stepped outside, determined to confront the man who had pushed us to this breaking point. I found Matt sitting in his car, casually fiddling with his phone, completely unaware of what was about to happen. When he noticed me approaching, he smirked and rolled down the window, the arrogance radiating off him. So, little Jake, I take it Rachel told you everything, he said smugly. Don't worry, you can keep her for a little while longer, but soon enough, she'll be mine. Before he could finish his sentence, I swung my fist as hard as I could, landing a solid left hook right on his nose. The crunch that followed was unmistakable, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence as he clutched his face in shock. Here, you'll need this, I said, tossing the dish towel at him. As he reached up to stop the bleeding, I swiftly looped a zip tie around his wrist, securing it to the headrest of his seat. His free hand fumbled as he tried to regain control, but before he could react, I threw open the door and landed another punch, this time hitting him square in the gut where he loved to brag about his manhood. He doubled over in pain, barely able to move. With one hand tied to the headrest and the other clutching the steering wheel, he was trapped. I wasted no time in tying his free hand to the wheel, securing him in place. Leaning in close, I whispered in his ear, my voice dripping with venom, so much for being the big, strong alpha male. Look at you now, pathetic. You've made a huge mistake, and you're going to pay for it. He groaned in pain, trying to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. I grabbed a nearby garden hose, its steel nozzle heavy in my hand, and with one swing, I smashed the car's side window, sending glass flying everywhere. I didn't stop there. I hit the windshield repeatedly until it was covered in cracks, spiderwebbing across the glass. Then, I turned to the headlights, shattering them one by one, the destruction giving me a sense of grim satisfaction. When I finally stopped, I walked back to the driver's side of the car, chuckling softly. Looks like your car is going to need some serious work, Matt. He looked terrified now, eyes wide as he realized just how badly things had gone for him. I pulled the carving knife from my pocket and pressed the blade lightly against his throat, right next to his jugular. His eyes lit up with fear, and he stammered, "Please, Jake. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was just sex. It didn't mean anything. I swear you'll never see me again." I glared at him, disgusted. "I'm not going to kill you. Not today. But listen to me carefully, if I hear a word from the police or suffer any consequences from this, I'll find you. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even in a year, but one day, you'll be alone, and I'll finish what I started here. You can decide whether this is the last time we see each other or whether you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." He trembled as I leaned in, plunging the knife into the seat next to him. "Rachel will need this to cut you loose. Now, you can either drive her away or head straight to the emergency room. I don't care which, but make sure I never see either of you again." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked back toward the house. My heart was still racing, adrenaline pumping through my veins. When I closed the door behind me, I could hear Rachel calling from upstairs. "Matt? Is that you? Did you and Jake talk things through?" Her ignorance stunned me. How could she be so blind to the chaos unfolding around her? "Rachel," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. "Matt's still in the car. He wants to talk to you outside. I think he's reconsidering some things." A few moments later, she came down the stairs, wearing nothing but a robe barely concealing the lingerie I had bought her months ago. She looked at me, confused. "What happened, Jake? Did you tell him everything's okay?" I kept my tone calm, masking my true feelings. "I made it clear to him what his future depends on. You should go outside and have a chat with him." Rachel gave me a puzzled look, but she didn't press me further. She slipped out the door and into the driveway to meet Matt. As soon as the door shut behind her, I wasted no time. I went upstairs, straight to the bedroom, and pulled out a suitcase. Without a second thought, I started throwing her clothes into it, underwear, socks, jeans, dresses, whatever I could grab quickly. The adrenaline was still surging through me, fueling every action. I ransacked the bathroom next, stuffing her makeup, toiletries, and anything else that belonged to her into the bag. Her tennis shoes from the closet went in last. Once everything was packed, I opened the window of the guest room and called out to her from above. "Rachel. You might need this," I yelled as I hoisted the suitcase out the window. It landed on the driveway with a hard thud, perfume bottles shattering inside, but I didn't care. Her shoes followed, one of them narrowly missing her as it hit the ground. She looked up at me, tears now streaming down her face, the shock and hurt evident in her expression. "Jake! What are you doing?" she cried, her voice shaking. I leaned out the window, my voice cold and detached. "Isn't this what you wanted, Rachel? You wanted to be with him, right?" Her tears flowed even harder, her voice barely able to form the words. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Jake. I thought this was something we could do together, something that would bring us closer. Please, let's talk. We can work this out." I shook my head, my voice steady and firm. "Rachel, you've been delusional from the moment you walked in tonight, talking about turning me into a cuckold like it was something I'd go along with. I don't know if you're on something or if I've completely misjudged who you are. Either way, I don't care anymore. Get out of my house. Take your lover to the hospital if you want, but remember this, if I hear a single word from the police or anyone else about today, there will be consequences." Her face crumpled, guilt washing over her as she stood there, clutching her suitcase in the driveway. "Please, Jake, I'll do anything. Let me in. We can fix this. I'll never speak to Matt again. I love you." I stared down at her, completely unmoved. "I'm packing the rest of your things. You'll know where to pick them up. Don't come back here." I slammed the window shut, the finality of it echoing through the empty room. As I made my way downstairs, I could hear her sobbing from outside, calling my name. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the front door, grabbed her purse from the counter, and hurled it at her. It hit her square in the chest before falling to the ground, and with that, I slammed the door again, locking it behind me. Standing there, leaning against the door, I could hear her muffled cries on the other side. "Jake, please. What did you do to Matt? Just come out here and talk to me." But I was done talking. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a cold beer from the fridge, and popped it open, sinking into a chair at the table. The rush of adrenaline slowly began to wear off, leaving a hollow ache in its wake. I stared out the window, watching as Matt, bleeding and battered, was still stuck in the car. Rachel was struggling to cut him free with the knife I had left for her. She was in a panic, her hands trembling as she tried to help him. After a few more minutes of fumbling, she finally got him loose. I watched as she helped him into the back seat of his car, still sobbing, before she slid into the driver's seat. As she backed out of the driveway, she looked utterly broken. I took a long sip of my beer, unable to process how things had escalated so quickly. How had my life taken such a wild, unexpected turn? I had never imagined Rachel would betray me like this. I never thought I'd be standing here, watching her drive away with a man she had chosen over me. Over the next few days, I avoided her calls. I knew she was trying to reach me. I had taken her phone, so she was likely calling from new numbers, leaving desperate messages. I didn't bother listening to them. I didn't care what she had to say anymore. I kept waiting for the police to show up at my door, thinking Matt might have tried to press charges after what I did to him. But nothing happened. No cops, no consequences. That, at least, gave me some relief. Maybe he was smart enough to realize that getting the police involved wouldn't end well for him. But I knew, eventually, I'd have to face Rachel again. There were still loose ends to tie up, and I couldn't avoid her forever. So, after a few days of silence, I finally called her. "Come by in an hour," I said flatly. "We need to talk." She arrived exactly on time, her face a mess of tears and exhaustion. It was clear she hadn't been sleeping, her eyes swollen and red. She hesitated on the porch for a moment before sitting down next to me on the steps. Neither of us said anything for a long time, the weight of what had happened hanging heavy between us. Finally, she broke the silence. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I don't know how I let Matt convince me that this was a good idea, that you'd be into it. Looking back, I can't believe I was so stupid. I thought maybe it was his confidence, his assertiveness that made me think it would help us. But now I see it was insane. I love you, Jake. I want only you. Please, forgive me. I'll do anything to make it right." I looked at her, feeling the anger still bubbling beneath the surface, but I kept my voice calm. "So, how was he, Rachel? In bed?" Her face flushed as she quickly shook her head. "Stop, Jake. Please. It never went that far." I didn't say anything, just stared at her, waiting for more. "After you and I talked, I realized how wrong it all was. I never slept with him. He's terrified of you, Jake. He fired me the next day, told me he didn't want anything more to do with me. And he spent 2 nights in the hospital because of what you did. He told them it was a robbery, and I backed him up. I didn't want you getting into trouble." I nodded slowly, my voice dry with sarcasm. "Well, at least he did something right." Rachel sat there, her eyes pleading with me. "Jake, please. I know I messed up, but I'm here now. I want to come home. I want to be your wife again. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I've realized that you're the only one I love, the only one I need. Please, forgive me." I took a deep breath, staring at the ground, trying to find the right words. "Rachel," I began, my voice steady but firm, "we've been together for 5 years. 2 of those years, we were deeply in love. The other 3, we've been married, building a life together. And already, you've either gotten bored or convinced yourself that something's missing. Maybe you think you love me, maybe part of you does. But one thing's certain, you don't respect me. If you did, you wouldn't have even entertained the idea of bringing your boss into our bed. Her face crumpled, tears starting to fall again, but I pressed on. You wouldn't have imagined me as some submissive beta male who would let his wife sleep with another man and then just take her back like nothing happened. If you truly loved and respected me, none of this would have crossed your mind. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off, my tone sharp. The truth is, you've already been unfaithful. You may not have slept with Matt, but the things you've done, the way you've let him into our relationship, it's all the same. Over the past few weeks, while he's been feeding you this alpha male nonsense, you've allowed yourself to drift away from what we promised each other. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Jake, I swear, I'll never do anything like this again. I shook my head, my heart heavy but resolute. You've already done it, Rachel. And we both know this wouldn't be the last time. Maybe not next year, maybe not even in 5 years, but eventually, you'll get bored again, or feel like something's missing, and you'll find another excuse. You've broken my trust, and once that's gone, everything else falls apart. Rachel broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, but I didn't let myself waver. I've thought long and hard about this, and I know what needs to happen. We don't have kids, our savings are modest, and there's barely any equity in the house. The risk of staying with you far outweighs any potential future happiness. I don't trust you anymore, and worse, I've lost respect for you. Her sobs grew louder, but I continued, my voice calm and final. We're getting a divorce, Rachel. You can keep your car, and I'll keep mine. We'll split what's left of our savings, and we'll sell the house. We're both still young. You can go find someone who fits into the life you're looking for, someone who can love and respect you for who you are. I stood up, my decision solidified. I've already hired a divorce lawyer. We can do this amicably, or you can hire your own, but either way, we're done. I'll start moving out next week so we can put the house on the market. It's over. Rachel was shaking her head, her face twisted in anguish. No, Jake, please. Forgive me. I love you. I need you. It was just a mistake. One I was dragged into. You have to forgive me. Please, don't do this. I looked at her one last time, my expression cold. Rachel, I've said everything there is to say. It's time for both of us to move on. Without another word, I helped pack the rest of her things into her car. When we finished, she looked at me, her eyes swollen from crying, but I didn't feel anything anymore. Goodbye, Rachel, I said, closing the door on our marriage as I turned and walked back into the house, locking the door behind me. The days following that conversation were surreal. After years of putting Rachel's happiness first, I suddenly found myself alone, but oddly, it felt like a weight had been lifted. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but the decision to end things had given me a strange sense of peace. I had no desire to look back. Once the divorce was set in motion, I decided I needed to get away. I'd always wanted to take a road trip across the country, something I had never done because I was always focused on our life, on being the stable, dependable husband. But now, there was nothing stopping me. A few weeks into my journey, while driving through a remote part of the Southwest, my car started making strange noises. It wasn't long before I had to pull over at the first exit with a gas station and an auto shop. The mechanic gave me the bad news, the engine was shot and would need a full rebuild. Frustrated, I wandered into a small diner nearby. That's where I met Zoe. She owned the place, and from the moment I walked in, there was something different about her. She had a spark, a sense of adventure and independence that I hadn't seen in anyone else. I didn't realize it then, but meeting her would change everything. Zoe convinced me to stick around while my car was being repaired. Over the next few days, she showed me the beauty of the area, taking me hiking, rock climbing, and out into the wilderness. She had this energy, this love for life, that began pulling me out of the haze I'd been in since the divorce. One night, after a day spent camping under the stars, things heated up between us. We kissed, and the passion that followed felt like a release, a moment where I could forget everything and just be in the present. We made love under the stars, and for the first time in a long while, I felt free. But after that night, guilt began creeping in. I wasn't ready for something serious, not after everything I'd been through with Rachel. When I confessed this to Zoe, she just smiled, brushing it off with ease. "Don't overthink it," she said. "Let's just enjoy the moment." Zoe was different. She didn't need promises or commitments, she just wanted to live fully, in the now. And over the next few weeks, we did exactly that. We kept seeing each other while my car was being fixed, but it wasn't about the future or anything more than what it was, just two people enjoying each other's company. When my car was finally ready, I found myself not wanting to leave. Zoe, ever the wise one, told me it was time to continue my journey. "There's more out there for you," she said, her eyes full of understanding. "Life's full of surprises. Embrace them." As I drove away from that small desert town, I felt like a new man. The anger and betrayal that had weighed me down for so long were gone. Zoe had helped me rediscover something I had lost, my own sense of adventure, the ability to live for myself. I left with a smile, knowing that I wasn't the same man who had once been consumed by hurt and rage. I was stronger now, and the road ahead was full of possibilities. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Thanks for watching this emotional roller coaster of love, betrayal, and self-discovery. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We've got more stories just like this coming your way every day. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, share your experiences. We'd love to hear your story.